Hello there. I want to welcome you all to a discussion by a group of friends. There were three nerds. We thought we would sit down and discuss about digital health, having spent over 30 years each of us in the digital health segment. And we thought there are a lot of ludicrous things going on out there. And we thought, is it just us who feels that these are ludicrous things that could possibly warrant a change? And we thought we will talk to industry specialists about our concerns or our ideas and see what they think about it. We are not attempting to change anything, we are just throwing ideas around. And we are just going to talk about it, and perhaps something great may come out of it, some new ideas may come out of it. And we call ourselves the Blue Health Squad.
So now let's welcome our first guest for our first episode of Blue Health Squad, Rick Pleijhuis. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, and nice to be the first guest of this series. My name is Rick Pleijhuis. I work as an internist, allergologist, and clinical immunologist at the University Hospital of Groningen in the Netherlands. And I've been working for approximately 10 years on clinical decision support tooling, of which I'm currently spending most of my time on a platform called Evidencio, which is a clinical decision support system for decision support in healthcare applications.
So let's just say that we all have a lot of years of experience in this industry, and we are all trying to see how we can change some of the ways things are done, and we are just trying to figure out ideas, right? So one of the things that has been really top of mind for us is, with all these digital health companies coming out, what are the major areas that need, or what is the major area that needs attention, other than, of course, the research and development of new drugs within digital health or within care delivery or care enhancement? We thought one of the areas that really makes a difference are treatment plans and care pathways. There are two types of workflows that we thought makes an impact in delivering care. One is the operational workflow, and the other one is the clinical workflow. And within clinical workflow, we are thinking about treatment plans and care pathways and protocols and other things. And today we are sort of talking about those things and how much digital health applications and processes can help in that area. So that brings us back to our main theme again, in terms of treatment plan, getting the patient engaged. How much is it helping now? And does digital health applications have a role to play? I think we discussed a lot about it. Is there anything more that you can add in terms of the care coordination that goes in between different stakeholders in treating a patient, the dietitian, the home caregiver, or the actual relative of the patient who is giving that care? All these kind of people. Rick?
Yeah, well, I think it will be very difficult to have a one-size-fits-all approach with the digital solutions. I think that's an utopia, right? So cultural differences are a tremendous thing, I guess. So in some cultures, it is quite common not to tell the patient himself or herself that he's suffering from a deadly disease, right? So the entire family knows, except for the patient, and they want to keep it like that, right? From the Western perspective, we find that hard to believe, but that's so there are different perspectives that digital health should take into account, and also for some people, the quantified self perspective is very tempting. But I also have patients with hypochondria, for example, and for them it is quite worrisome, and they actually fear all these numbers because it might tell something that they have an illness that they didn't know about, right? So there's so many different perspectives, and I think we should all take them into account. So a one-size-fits-all approach will not be the way forward, I think. But there is an important role for the physician, in my opinion, to discuss this with the patient and to make sure that the digital options that are out there are used in a way that are actually helping the patient forward. And for some patients, that could mean that they are not using any digital tools anyway. So, and for other patients, they can use the full spectrum of all the different applications that are out there and everything in between. So if I often get the question, do you think that AI will replace the doctor between now and 5 years, for example? Well, I definitely don't think that will be the case, but I do think that the workflow of the physician will change quite dramatically. And I think one of the most important aspects that the physician can still add value to would be to decide together with the patient which tools to use, how to use them, and to make sure that we use the outcomes of these digital systems in a way that benefit the health of the patient in the most optimal way.
Tell us a little bit about Evidentia and how you do your stuff.
Yes, well, at Evidencio, we are focusing on two main things. So the first would be the development, validation, and implementation of decision support tools in the form of prediction algorithms. And since there's a lot of regulation on these medical devices in the EU, but also outside the European Union, we're focusing on a medical device regulation compatible way to fulfill all these different steps. So that's one aspect. The other aspect would be that we are also looking into decision support tools, so the care pathways, so to speak, in which we are helping out physicians in standardizing the care pathway, collecting discrete data along the way, and inserting all kinds of clinical decision support tools as a medical device at the different steps in the process. So that way we are not only asking physicians to collect data, but we are also providing them with decision support tools which are patient-tailored and by generating reports automatically, which saves them quite a lot of administrative time.
So you are working with some hospital systems right now?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, for example, we've recently built a treatment care path in my own field as an allergologist for hay fever patients. So hay fever is often regarded as a not very dramatic disease, which can be the case, but it also can have quite a dramatic impact on people's lives. And what we saw is that there is a shortage of allergologists and that a lot of patients are kept at the general practice for sometimes too long, I think. And these patients have still a lot of complaints, even though they are using the standard medication. But on the other hand, it's not possible, there's not a capacity to send all these patients to an allergologist, and we have waiting lists for over half a year. So what we've been doing is to build a digital care pathway, which is actually developed by the medical specialist, so the allergologist, and we are providing this care pathway to the general practitioner. So it's more or less like an allergologist is actually sitting at the seat right next to the general practitioner, and he's helping him or her out to ask the right questions and to give the patient-tailored recommendations in the way that we would do it ourselves. And also we are sending a digital questionnaire to the patient, which is quite extensive and covering all kinds of topics of complaints that could be the case in hay fever patients. And based on these questionnaires and the answers that we get from them, we will also give direct recommendations to the patients for simple measures that they could do without medication. And so these different aspects can help us to improve the care of hay fever patients in the general practice. And in the case that there are specific symptoms or red flags, so to say, that could hint of an underlying disease which could have serious effects, then the software can detect these and respond to the GP that this is a patient that needs to be referred to a medical specialist in a hospital. So, and we often saw that before, and these patients were not detected, right? So they would stay too long with the general practitioner and could develop all kinds of serious and often irreversible side effects. So, and I think this could be a very nice example on how we can improve the efficiency of these care pathways and also make sure that scarce resources are optimized, are used in an optimized.
I think this is a very interesting example, which actually shows several aspects in optimizing a healthcare system or in optimizing health economics. On one hand, you are filtering out actually all the trivial noise from entering a specialist's doctor's office. On the other hand, you are empowering the GPs to provide a sound diagnosis to patients with certain symptoms, and you're empowering the GPs to redirect those patients who are truly in need to a specialist, who then, given, what did you say, half a year of waiting list, to actually overcome or shortcut this half-year waiting list to get a specialist opinion.
Yeah.
Do you have ideas on I guess you implemented this in the Netherlands now. Do you have ideas on the impact on overall health economics in one way or the other? Or how does it impact the healthcare system overall of the Netherlands?
Yes, well, we did perform a pilot in 2023, which was successful and based on which we are currently implementing it in the Netherlands. So I don't have those figures yet, but from the pilot, I could say that from the 50 patients that we saw using this application, there were only 2 that were actually seen by an allergologist. And so the vast majority of these patients could be already treated in the general practice, so they did not need a referral anymore. So that could save quite a lot of time and also money for the healthcare system in general. And I think that this is just an example for hay fever, right? But there are many different applications in which you could use a similar setup.
And before it was kind of these 48 patients which were seeing a specialist, or
yes, yeah. So these were all patients that in which the GP wanted to refer the patient to an allergologist, and instead they used this approach now. So in the vast majority of cases, the referral was not needed anymore.
Okay, and this goes actually back to your initial statement about standardization, right? So it's about standardization of certain diagnostic paths. It's about standardization of certain treatment paths, and it's about leaving out those cases which are complex, complicated, non-standardizable to the specialists.
Exactly, yeah.
And here is an example of how digital health treatment pathways are really helpful. So imagine in countries where there are no resources, like rural areas where there are no doctors, many of the standard conditions can be cured or treated in this fashion. So my question, having learned about how your company does, Carsten and Andreas have been working with the big pharma for a long time, right? So can you tell us your experience about the pharma's ability to engage with patients, and is it successful or is it not?
Yes, I'll give you my honest opinion. Yeah, but I think that pharma can be a real driver of these kinds of innovation because they are capable and also willing to invest in these kinds of technologies, which I think is quite hard to get investments on from other sides, the regular financial opportunities. The different aspect, I think, is that patients often regard pharma as quite big and also somewhat challenging or frightening even. So and the same thing accounts for physicians. I think we also want to stay independent and make sure that we are independent of whatever pharmaceutical company. So when pharma invests in these kinds of opportunities and developments, then there's always the risk of losing this independence, right? And I think that personally, I think it can very well coexist. And I think it's even probably not possible, or at least very hard, to not do this together with pharma, because they're also developing all the new products. And they're going really fast. And hospitals and government institutions are often not going very fast. So this coexistence can be very powerful, I think, as long as we make sure that we keep, as physicians, our independence from pharma.
I have a point to make here, right? With pharma, there are three areas where there is a very close interaction with the patients, right? One is during the clinical trials, right? Secondly is when they are post-marketed products. Once they have made a drug, then they will, the degree of interaction, I'll explain that later. The third one is if they are into, those pharmas that are into digital therapeutics. I'll take the last one first. Digital therapeutics, in my opinion, by the very definition, is a digital heavy product. It is, in other words, it's a treatment plan that, you go into it, whether it is through, behavioral change or advising or suggestions or whatever kind of things, that it takes the patient through the digital therapeutics. So it is very heavily involved. So in that, the pharma has to be really investing in digital therapeutics part. The clinical trial parts is also very critical for the pharma because they have to interact with the patient to collect the data. These two areas are really important for them. This is my opinion, having no understanding, not understanding, having no experience working with pharma directly. And the third one is with the post-marketed product, which the pharma doesn't see any value generally in that. It's just, they either send the medical rep to the doctors and the doctors are educated on how to do the things and other, how to treat the patient or how to prescribe it, but they don't have any interest in interacting directly with the patient. But like you said, it can be one instrument versus the other. So they are not, their customers are really the doctors who are prescribing it for them. Now, on the first and the last one, the clinical trials and the other things, there's a very heavy involvement in digital therapeutics. And whichever pharma is going to really invest in that or select a platform that helps them go into it. So given that, I think there is no way for pharma to escape from digital health investment, especially given that clinical trials are one of the key revenue drivers for a pharma in that investment. And I'm wondering, based on both your experience, how they are faring in that aspect. And in the last one, in the digital therapeutic side, I don't know whether many pharmas are really invested in that because the efficacy of that has not been shown. There are two companies which went under recently, Peer Therapeutics or other things, I don't know. And the reimbursement model, like Rick was saying, is not yet crystallized on that front.
It's a new business. It's a new product. It's actually, if you take this new product, new market, MBA kind of chart, it's diversification. But many pharmaceutical companies, since it needs clinical trials to generate evidence for digital therapeutics, same as for other therapeutics, they don't see it as a diversification. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of spendings in the last 5 to 10 years into digital therapeutics by pharmaceutical companies didn't pay off. Because one was throwing money on product development and not onto a venture development. Yeah? That's one thing. When it comes to the clinical trial space, I think there is a lot of initiatives trying to make clinical trials or patient recruitment or patient onboarding or reporting of measures more efficient, by bringing clinical trials onto certain digital platforms and so on, or even by going for, in certain types of studies, for DTC, so decentralized clinical trials or digital clinical trials. For the post-market feedback, I think I don't have that much of an overview. I think many invested into kind of patient-reported outcome measures, apps, and other apps for post-market feedback and so on. But I'm not sure if this was ever done successfully at scale, but I might lack some insights.
There are a lot of pilots that they have done and abandoned.
Pilots, yes, but pilots are usually
Yeah.
not
I'm
established
surprised
products.
Carsten has nothing to say about this. I'm really
Oh,
surprised.
no. No, I was wondering about Rick, because in Netherlands you're used to Proms and Prems, at least from my knowledge in routine. But I'm wondering, what is your status on that in reality, in practice? Yes, indeed, we are using Proms and Prems on a regular basis. But I think the true value of these Proms and Prems outcome measures lies in the situation where we also have the right data at the start, right? And also during the process, so that you know which particular variables and data led to the eventual outcome. And that's often lacking, I think. So we have quite a good understanding of the eventual outcome, but not how it came about. And I think if we are talking about clinical trials, like you were mentioning, there are often very strict inclusion criteria, which are leading to a quite select group of patients, which are then intensely monitored during the study. So this is giving quite a good insight for this particular group of patients, right? But in reality, there is often we are often faced with patients that do not fulfill these criteria, and then we can still prescribe the medication, sometimes off-label, and we don't have a good understanding of how the medication would act because the data is lacking, right? And this is also not, at least not in a regular way, and part of monitoring studies, and this is not done in a standardized manner. So again, I think also the care path solution could help us here by collecting data along the way. We know which treatment is prescribed to the patient, also if it would be an off-label treatment. And we also know how the patient responds over time, if he or she would develop side effects, etc. And if you combine all this information with the Prems and Proms, then you get a very valuable longitudinal data set, which can provide insight based on real-world data. And I think the real-world data is often lacking. And if we want to progress in medicine, we should take that into account on a structured basis.
Yeah, this now we are basically going back to the start of this conversation, because if you really want to do that consistently, let's assume it's possible to capture discrete data as good as possible. It's still siloed, so the only way to store it is centralized and actually patient-centric. So you have basically, it's not about interoperability between the systems, but interoperability between the system and the patient storage solution, or whatever they use, or whatever you want to call it. And you can call it Apple Health Kit or whatever. But that's the other thing. What I was thinking about, talking about clinical trials. You have a very narrow population which you have dedicated to show your clinical impact of a test, of a drug, of whatever. But the reality is different. So the future, if you're talking about personalized medicine, it's not like personalized medicine which particular companies deliver with mRNAs or whatever, but it's already on a level that you have data aggregated, and then you can do, I don't know, pharmacogenetics, or simply, you don't even have to do it on a genetic level, but you can do it on a digital level. You don't even have to sequence something eventually, but you can say that this drug combination works best for this subpopulation or parameters of that particular patient. But that as well goes back to the point where we're having a participatory system where the patients are health aware and want to interact with the system itself. And now going back to the clinical trials, it's super hard to find patients for clinical trials already. And basically, you're now going to have a non-patient, more or less, like a citizen which has an incident, and then you want to motivate them that they participate in the system and contribute data without having any impact. And it's very funny when you talk to patients, they're always afraid of the pharma companies to share data. If, like, assuming you would go out and say, okay, I want to really learn from data from patients which are in principle healthy, and they develop a chronic condition, and they want to find a tool, and they say explicitly a tool which might be a combination of digital, a chemical, and whatever, in order to prevent an onset of a situation, for example, say a neurodegenerative disease, which really takes very long and is very difficult to diagnose it early, the moment the patient experiences symptoms. But the patients or the people, the citizens, don't want to participate in that stage typically. And the funny thing is, then once you're diagnosed with end-stage cancer, they're happy to join any clinical trial. Because it's a last attempt to really survive. So it's also a bit about sustainable thinking. And going back to that, what we said before, I had a particular thought. Like, we're always, like, healthcare is mega regulated on any level. And we were talking about, how do we regulate now these digital tools? How do we do reimbursement and so on and so forth? And we have to protect the people from bad stuff and so on and so forth. But there, where we're moving now with this healthcare system into a more consumer business, it's not regulated at all. No one regulates if you eat bad chips or fries or God knows what, or bad food, or if you go to Burger King, McDonald's, or whatever. The only thing which we have kind of regulated, but the lobby is also still very strong there, and they're fighting back, is smoking. That you show pictures now on the package. At the end of the day, also, I think in the healthcare space, maybe there has to be a societal change, and I don't know how long it's going to take, that the people become health conscious to a certain extent, also in that space, not only about eating healthy food, which they anyway don't care at all, but also in the consequences of what they have to do after they have consumed the unhealthy food. And I don't know, Rick, how you think about it, and in particular, I don't know, I'm very curious also, especially since you're into the allergy part. Like there is always the stuff in the media, and I'm not so deep into that topic, but like our world, I would say, generates so many small particles everywhere, which trigger or over-trigger the immune system, causing more and more allergies. Who is protecting the people from that part? There is no regulation for this. I don't know. I'm happy to hear your point of view on that. Okay.
Yes. Well, it's quite contradictive indeed, I think. And it's also the awareness of, for example, if we have a self-driving car, right? Then even if it is way the point of being much better than a human driver, still it would make it to the headlines when an accident would happen with a self-driving car. I think exactly the same is the case for AI applications, right? So doctors are making errors on a daily basis, unfortunately. They will keep doing that since that's a human thing. But as soon as an AI, even if it outperforms the doctor by 10 times, makes an error, then no one will accept it. So there is this contradiction in risk, in the perceiving of risk, I think. And I'm not sure how we should tackle it. I think it's indeed interesting that patients can be quite well focused on privacy issues, for example, while they are posting all their social life on Facebook, for example. So there's also this contradiction there, and I think it's a perceiving a way of perceiving that is not always rational. So I'm not sure how we should solve it in a rational way.
Good. On that note, let's just start wrapping up today. I will let Rick go first. What did you think about the overall conversation, and what's your takeaway?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting to discuss with you on the different solutions that are out there regarding the digital applications and the care pathways, and also to hear your perspective from your years of experience in this topic, and also the experience from the pharmaceutical point of view. So I think it was very interesting. So thank you for this input.
Yeah, I think it's health blueSquad. Always ask for the so what. Yeah, and since we were talking about treatment plans and care pathways and how digital health applications can help, from the conversation, I liked very much that allergology example by Rick, which showed that, I mean, it's a tremendous work probably to develop that knowledge base or that system helping GPs. But I think it shows also that if you understand a little bit how a patient flow works and where to implement it to generate or to create value and to create a benefit to the system, to the patients, to the stakeholders in the systems, being physicians and so on, that you can have a big impact even with small isolated solutions without having to change all the infrastructure, having to change all the system, having to change all the thinking about how things are reimbursed. And that's one of my major takeaways, that we don't need to be overwhelmed by the complexity of the system and by it's a matter of implementing it. And as I understood from Rick in that allergy case, that's what happened there. You brought together the stakeholders in order to implement it in the healthcare system of the Netherlands. And I think that's very promising examples, and we should have more of these.
Carsten.
Yeah, I think we learned we cannot just solve with technology. There's lots of societal impact as well, in particular also that example with the allergy. It has to be relevant, it has to be impactful. We have to do baby steps because the complexity is so big. We cannot just solve it with one big shot. And I think the major problem, or not problem, the situation right now is that there is a lot of hope because the pressure on the healthcare system is extremely high. So there's a lot of hope into the technology because it can be scaled extremely fast to the population. I think that's the major difference compared to the last 100 and whatever years of medical history. So like these new solutions are actually extremely fast to come to market and to really have an impact. And these use cases have to be implemented, have to be showcased, have to create the trust in the clinicians as well as also in the society. And then we will have to do those steps, and it's a long journey. I think it's not going to be a quick win. It's going to be faster than maybe the previous steps we did in healthcare, but still, it needs a long journey and a lot of acceptance in the society, and we will end up, I think, in a situation for the patient as well as for the clinician. Like I have a picture in my head, like with a pilot, like you have the autopilot which flies the plane, but you still want to steer yourself sometimes because of you just having fun steering yourself, or because the conditions are not allowing you to do different because of bad weather or whatever. And I think that's most likely going to be the future. And also, like taking the analogy of the airplanes, maybe we need a big incident that the black box comes through. Yeah, that was the reason why we have black boxes today in all the airplanes, and we adopt also what you said, Rick, that we make mistakes. We're all humans. We make mistakes, and also the machines make mistakes. And this continuous learning and learning from a failure. Failure is a feedback. So that's the way how we can go ahead.
Thank you, Carsten. I think I'll keep it really short. I think digital health is helping in care pathways and treatment plans. I think more on the care delivery side from a physician perspective in terms of supporting the diagnostics and the personalized treatment plans that can be given. But on the patient engagement side, it has not been that successful because of the inherent nature of how people behave. That's what my understanding is. But it is making a good progress, as we can see impact from Evidentia, how you have changed a lot of waiting times and giving broader reach. Ultimately, digital health progress should be slow, deliberate, and careful. That is how we have to develop this thing. And on that note, thank you all. And that concludes our first episode.